Erich Kästner was born in February 1899 in Dresden in the German Empire. He grew up in modest but very loving circumstances and had a particularly close relationship with his mother, who strongly influenced him. The First World War interrupted his education. As a soldier, he experienced the harshness of the military, which later made him a determined pacifist. In the 1920s, he worked as a journalist and writer in Berlin and quickly became well known for his children's books and socially critical poems. After the Nazis seized power in 1933, his works were banned and burned, yet he remained in Germany. Also, he was hardly allowed to publish anymore. After the Second World War, he lived in Munich, became culturally and politically involved in promoting democracy and peace, and remained an influential voice in German literature until his death in 1974. Kästner was a sharp observer of his time, a convinced pacifist, a moralist with humor, and a writer who had the courage to remain in his country during one of the darkest chapters of German history. In 1933, his books were publicly burned by the National Socialists. He himself stood anonymously in the crowd and watched. He could have gone into exile, but he decided to stay, out of attachment to his mother, out of a sense of responsibility, and also out of the desire to bear witness. His philosophy was clear: decency is more important than ideology, humanity more important than power. Kästner believed that one must remain decent even when the world is not. With subtle irony and clear language, he criticized militarism, conformity, and moral cowardice. What made him special was that he combined entertainment with conviction, because he took children seriously without being naive, and criticized adults without becoming cynical. This video tells the story of an author who spoke great truths in quiet words, and whose message today is more current and relevant than ever. Erich Kästner did not believe in miracles in a supernatural sense. He was a rationalist, a humanist, and a convinced advocate of reason. For him, change did not come about through magic or divine intervention, but through human action, responsibility, and courage. His most well-known statement on this is, "There is nothing good unless you do it." With this sentence, Kästner summed up his philosophy of life. What he meant was, waiting for a miracle is pointless. Hope alone changes nothing. If the world is to become better, people themselves must take action. For Kästner, the miracle did not lie in the supernatural, but in the moral actions of the individual. In a time of war, dictatorship, and social indifference, this was a clear and courageous message. The work of Erich Kästner is still important today because it deals with questions that are timeless. How does the individual behave in difficult times? What does civil courage mean? And how does one remain morally right when society changes radically? Kästner wrote in an era shaped by political polarization, economic uncertainty, and the rise of extremist ideologies. The later years of the Weimar Republic were deeply divided socially. Mistrust, propaganda, and radicalism gained influence. Even today, many countries are experiencing increasing political division, deliberate disinformation, and heated public debates. The parallel lies less in identical circumstances than in the social climate. Insecurity, irresponsibility towards social problems, and the temptation to look for someone to blame. Another central point is his warning against indifference. Kästner showed that democracies are endangered not only by radical forces, but also by the silence of the majority. His conviction that responsibility begins with the individual seems especially relevant today. In a digitally connected world, where information spreads quickly, the question of personal attitude and responsibility may be even more urgent than in his time. His way of taking children seriously is also modern. In books such Emil and the Detectives or The Flying Classroom, he portrays young people who think independently, act in solidarity, and make moral decisions. He conveys that courage and decency are not a question of age. His work therefore remains relevant because it does not offer simple solutions, but calls for an attitude: think critically, remain human, and do not wait for miracles. Precisely in his emphasis on responsibility, reason, and empathy lies the lasting relevance of his work. Erich Kästner was more than just the author of famous children's books. He was a man who in a time of political extremes believed in reason, humanity, and personal responsibility. He experienced war, censorship, and dictatorship, and yet he held firmly to the conviction that moral action is not a matter of circumstances, but of choice. His stories told of courage and friendship, but between the lines there was always a greater message. Do not wait for rescue, become active yourself. What we can learn from Kästner is not a complicated ideology or philosophy. It is an attitude. Think critically, do not remain silent when injustice occurs, and preserve decency even when it becomes uncomfortable. His time was marked by uncertainty and division, and precisely for that reason he reminds us that democracies endure not only through great deeds, but through the everyday responsibility of every individual. Be honest, hurt no one, take responsibility. Kästner reminds us, compassion counts more than ideology. Help where it's needed, stand up for what is right, even when it becomes uncomfortable. Humor makes you strong, protects against bitterness, and exposes power. Good intentions alone are not enough. Being decent means showing humanity, remaining courageous, laughing, and above all, acting, not just talking. In the end, perhaps his most important message remains: the world does not change through miracles, but through people who have the courage to do what is right.